Good evening, everybody. However many well, we probably have at least double-digit fans, I think.
Triple digit, I'm sure.
We'll see.
Triple digit fans.
Yeah, welcome to another episode of More Wild Talk, and we have our moderator, Payton, joining us tonight.
That's right.
Because we want him to help us. We want you all to help us. And so Payton's going to be the one who sees your comments and passes them on to us as far as that goes. But before we get into the program tonight and what exactly we're going to talk about, just kind of go a couple things. Just want to remind everyone, if you didn't check your email today. We want you all to help us. And so Payton. Is that you, Payton?
Sorry, I had to pull the video up so I can see the comments, but it wouldn't let me mute it beforehand. So you just got a little replay there.
Hey,
replay.
Tracy,
Okay.
we knew this was a bad idea, inviting Payton.
This is why Okie is usually in the
How did the
background.
Okie get his nickname? Our first question is up.
Well, they just saw why. But church, we will not be at the building this Sunday. We'll be online once again while we deal with some of the virus stuff that's around our community, and hopefully we can be back in the building the next Sunday, and we're looking forward to that. Just want to ask everyone to continue to pray for Charlotte Hall, because she is in the hospital and she's been put on a ventilator. And so this is a serious situation for Charlotte, and we want everyone to bring her before our Father in prayer. Tracy, who's your Friday guest?
Well, it's actually my brother and his youth minister, and it's something that they started because of COVID, and it is really picked up, and they've got people picking it up in other places and saying we're using this and showing it in our nursery program or our preschool program, things of that sort. But they've started a Bible Kids program, Dak and Zach.
Okay,
and
so tomorrow morning, 9 a.m.
Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m.
on Tracy's Facebook page.
Yes, my Facebook page.
And Payton will be bringing the lesson for our online experience. And
That's right.
What are you going to be talking about?
So we are still in Genesis, surprise to all of our folks. We are in Genesis chapter 3. So a lot of people call it the fall of humanity. I like to call it the failing or the failure of humanity. But we'll be looking at that conversation with the serpent and what does it mean for our life, because, well, we have that same conversation almost every day. So we get to play with that a little bit.
And there's a podcast that can help us.
There is a podcast where we go a little bit deeper. Every week, Tracy and I, we sit down and we talk about each sermon lesson and subject a little more in depth. And that is thebiblepeel.com. That's P-E-E-L, Peel. The Bible Peel. So you can find that on podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts, or our website. It's all there.
And one more thing to mention, Tracy, before we get into the body of our show tonight. Baseball is getting closer to being back.
I hope so. I keep hearing about all these players testing positive for COVID, and baseball players are not happy with the system they have for getting these test results back. So yes, I am cautiously excited about baseball.
Well, if a lot of these players keep opting out, we might get the call.
Well, we've been waiting for our opportunity.
Yeah.
NBA's here in Florida, in Orlando, ready to play.
And nobody's going to care if we get COVID playing baseball.
No, they're not going to care. No, they're not going to care.
Play baseball either. Well, we want to talk about tonight. We want to talk about, what are some, let's kind of bat around some ideas that churches can implement. And these are what we would call maybe simple ideas. In other words, not something you have to go out and raise $1 million for. or something like that, but just simple ideas that would help the church in their mission. And so, in other words, we're not going to talk about, well, yeah, we need to get better at learning Jesus. And we know that's what a church is about. But what are some ideas that will help us in doing that? And just some simple ideas we can just kind of bat around. What we want to do, our faithful listeners, is to ask you to go, if you have some ideas, throw them on there. We'd like to hear them and maybe discuss them a little bit. As we talk about some ideas, maybe you can give us the thumbs up or the thumbs down on that. And we'll just kind of work through maybe 3 or 4, each of us will have 3 or 4 or 5 ideas that we've written down and think, here's something, not only, and we're not just talking about, this is something that the Vero Beach Church of Christ needs to do. We're talking about just generally churches, maybe things we think would be good ideas. So Tracy, why don't you start us off with a couple of yours? We'll kind of go back and forth.
Okay.
Some things off the top of your head.
Well, maybe I ought to start with, since we've kind of led into some of what we're dealing with here, which is just an online presence. I think we've come out of this thing seeing how important our online presence, should be for the church. And, and what we've done is, we've traditionally put on, hey, here's some advertisements, here's some things coming up, and those are all great. But, we've spent a lot of time, just really being out there, whether, it's more wild talk where we have discussions about topics, whether, the prayer and a psalm that I do in the morning, some people find, it being helpful to have a time of prayer every morning, hear a psalm, maybe, a few other things, trying to find some, and then we've done the podcast you've mentioned, and I mentioned, my brother and really the spearhead is the youth minister there that got all of this. They wouldn't have, they've told me, they said we wouldn't have done this had it not been for COVID. And they're saying, look, we're out here more than we ever have been before. More people are listening, people that would not have maybe even stepped in a church. And, I just think the online presence and constantly trying to find ways that we can be out there and being a positive influence.
Tracy, I think that's a good thought. I think one of the major conversations that's going on right now is that many of us are having to do online content because out of necessity, because that's the only option. So what happens whenever we can start meeting in person? Should we back off of our online presence? Should we have like an equal presence? Should we do more online because more people are wanting that? How should we as church leaders in churches, how should we balance that?
Well, it's a good question. We spend a lot of time, Payton, preparing for the week, and we do a lot of preparation for, a one-time sermon or class or whatever it may be. And, you're and you have so many people, which those are good. It's not to take away from that, but more people spend time on their phones, on apps, on the social networks, I think, than ever before. And many of the ones that we really want to reach is a group of people who, they basically, they live on this thing, and it's really, I think it's about, finding the marketplace and really continuing to hit on that. And I think our presence should at least continually, we've spent a lot of time with it, and I think we should do as much time as we've done with it. I don't know if we're even capable of doing more unless we bring other people in. But at the same time, I think we need to give that same amount of time that we give to it. But at the same time, being willing to change, being willing to say, okay, this isn't working. It ran its course, but we got to find other ways.
One thing that I hear often with particularly a guy named Brady Shear, who provides resources for churches and their online presence. He says, he has this little quote where he says, "Seize the 167." And it's the
Right.
167 other hours in the week that, like you said, people are on their phones and not sitting in your pews. Don't just do social and don't just do online to be online, but do it,
Right.
look at it as a mission field.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think, like Tracy and Payton was saying, this kind of been forced on us, a lot of the stuff we're doing because of this happening, but we're seeing some of the advantages of having these kind of things. And I think we can definitely see some of these things are going to continue.
Yeah.
I think why it's a good idea for churches to consider is this is something that any size church can do.
Mm-hmm.
This is not like, okay, you got to be a big church to put on something like this. I'm sitting at home, you're sitting at home, Payton's actually at the building.
With everything I could have at home.
Yeah, but the point is, we don't all have to be there. We can easily do this.
Well, and to go with that, the majority, about at least half of our videos have been shot on this phone right here.
Right.
Like this
Yeah.
cell phone. That's not even the fanciest phone out there.
Easy thing to do. And as you're saying, it's something I'm going to go into one of mine because it kind of incorporates a little bit of what we're talking about. And one of my things I think is any churches can do, particularly this would be more in our Church of Christ tradition, is we celebrate our autonomy. If you're not familiar with the Church of Christ, we don't have a hierarchy. Each church is autonomous. So the elders at that church and the folks, members of that church, they're the ones that decide what happens at that church. And so when I say celebrate autonomy, what I mean by that is just seize the opportunity to say, hey, this is our church. We're here. We're in Vero Beach. What works in Vero Beach? We're not a cookie cutter. We're not the McDonald's that's placed in Vero Beach. The Church of Christ is placed in Vero Beach, and we're a franchise. And so everything has to be, the menu has to be this. We can be culturally aware of where we are. So where we are, we tailor what we do to match our culture. And if, in fact, we want to, be relevant to younger folks like Payton's age, we need to understand the social media that's going on. We need to be able to meet them there to entice them to learn more about Jesus through those mediums. So one of my things I think that anybody can do, you celebrate that autonomy, particularly with that. And also though, you promote unity. And you promote unity, I think, among the churches by saying they're autonomous. They get to decide the way they want to do something. We don't sit here and judge. They're doing this, so they must be wrong. And we don't want to have anything to do with them. No, that's their church. This is our church, but we have common ground that we can get together and do things. And so I think that's my idea, one of my ideas.
Let me read a couple of comments and then I'll ask you a question, Joe, to go with yours. A couple of people said in regards to online presence, Carlene Wiley said, helps me feel connected, especially during COVID. That is especially true. But Julie Anderson said, it's good for shut-ins. So that's good even outside of COVID. She also says it's easy for me to share lessons with my kids in Orlando. So people who aren't near to us. And then Stephanie says, Stephanie Chisholm, it feels like its own ministry and allows people to watch and listen when they're able to. So some other people who are kind of backing behind the online presence. One question I had for you, Joe, in regards to finding that autonomy and celebrating it, what's just a quick, easy way for a church to discover who they are and what's important for them in their community?
Well, I think you need to really take a good look at your community and evaluate what kind of community do you have? The typical, it's a blue collar place, it's a white collar place, it's a retiree location, we're on the beach, it's an outdoor area. You evaluate all those kind of things. I think that also takes into account the fact, and I'll just use our county. If our building was in Fellsmere, we should be hiring a Spanish speaking minister, to be part of that congregation, or at least a part-time guy or girl that's going to be, Spanish speaking, because that's a big Spanish speaking community. So you look at that kind of place. If we were in an inner city, with a large Black population, you want to be able to culturally relate to them by having a diverse staff and leadership in that situation. You probably want to do that anyway, but I mean, what I'm saying is you got to look at where you are. And once again, we're not McDonald's down here. We're in Vero Beach, and we should have a different menu than some church that's in New York City.
Yeah.
We should just be different.
Yeah, the message remains the same, but the method by which we get that message out might change per community.
And our nose shouldn't get out of joint, because up in New York City, they're doing this thing that we wouldn't do down here. And I guarantee you, if we went, we support churches in India, and if we went to some of those services, we'd go, we wouldn't do that here.
Yeah.
But that's India, and that's their culture. And Lewis came over here, and I ended up with some kind of robe thing and a little all that
we have pictures of that. If you want to see it, just message the church. We'll make sure you get them.
I've got it on this phone right here.
That's not something we would do here, but that's something they would do in India.
Oh, it is something we did here.
Well, here's a question, Joe. Coming out, when or if we ever come out of COVID, do you see our communities being different? And we are, and I think most churches are going to have to say, do we need to reevaluate our community after going through something like this?
Well, I don't know that we have to reevaluate our community. We're going to have to reevaluate some things that we do, only because this virus is going to be around for a little while.
Yeah.
And so there's just different things we do, such as, okay, we're not doing classes. We're trying to minimize all, gathering together in groups in closed spaces, so we don't have classes. And I think what, Carlene's saying is it's good to have this thing going on right now where I can have some connection with the leadership, or, see some folks that I don't see because I'm stuck at home.
Glenda Wild is tagging along with you in that thought. She says, we have a chance to possibly be planting seeds in different way, might reach someone who would initially walk in our door. It seems like we almost hit the reset button, or we come to a fresh, about to lay seeds on a new field that's just been tilled. Coming out of COVID, maybe we have chance to plant seeds we never thought possible.
Yeah.
Tracy, let's move on to you and another thing that we can do. Subtle, small, simple idea.
Yeah, I think one of the things, and I'm seeing this not just, I see this as we've gone into COVID, and everything else that's happened. I mean, every month there's something new, seems like, wish we could backtrack to those murder hornets and just stay with them for a while, but
The simple days.
yeah, exactly. The simple days. But I've wondered if we have done as leaders, and I put myself there, number one, doing a good job in preparing people for something like this. And look, no one was ready for this. I mean, we know that on so many scales, but there's just been one, seemed like tragic event or major social upheaval after another. And, people I think are struggling in getting some answers and knowing what to do. And whether it's in quarantine or whether it's otherwise. So one of the things I see that I believe maybe we should definitely do better is more times of prayer, more times in smaller groups where we can talk about things, we can share things, whether it's our frustrations or good things that's happening in our lives. To me, one of the positives of the the prayer and a psalm in the morning is people can come on and I will pray for them, or we'll talk about things, whether or not, even though that's not even really in an intimate setting necessarily. But at the same time, I think people, they need something where they can really connect. And it's not that we haven't had small groups and.
Well, I was just going to ask you, are you really kind of promoting small groups? Like, hey, we really need to do small groups well.
Yeah, I think so. I think we have to look at small groups and not say this is a Bible class or this is in lieu of Sunday night service. I think we have to really look at it and say, you know what, I really need a spiritual family. And, everything that we've gone through, how important. I've told more people in our church. I told Payton this the other day, I think. I've told more people in our church that I love them than I have the 11 years I've been here over the last, I'd say 3 or 4 months. And I felt compelled to say that, but I feel like I'm a little closer to people because of things that are going on. And, I'm much more emotional about our people than I think I've ever been before. And I see there's a good, it's important to have that sense of things. But I'll turn that over to y'all. That's just something I see we need to build on.
Okay. Better small groups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess just a small question, and you kind of hinted on it, but just clarify, what is the difference in the small groups you would like to see in the small groups we have done here in the past, or how we might have looked at small groups before COVID-19 versus
Right.
out of it? What is like 1 or 2 differences that you see?
Well, sometimes the biggest talk, and again, I put myself here, I don't put this on anybody else, but the talk is, well, what do we need to study? And it's not that that's not important. I think as small groups get into these things, I think what's really important is to be able to talk to each other, to be able to trust each other, to build a family unit of sorts, within the body itself, and a place that we can be genuine, we can be real, we can have such a trust that we can disagree with each other. And at the same time, we can get up and we have prayer and we can get up and everything's okay. That's different feel than, okay, we're going through this series.
Yeah.
So
I'll go to my 2.
Go for
okay.
it.
Well, I'll just pick one of them. I think all churches ought to do this, and we have done it. We have tried it before, and I think it was successful. Worship first, class second. So 9:30 worship, class to follow. I really, really, really like that. The more I think about it, the more I think back on when we did it. I'm just not sure why it shouldn't just be the normal thing, as opposed to somehow the normal was Bible class first, worship second. It's almost like, well, let's make sure we catch all the people that can't get up in time in the morning. Let's do worship second. Let's be real about some of our motivation. You got to come to worship and you can stay for class then.
So how would you say that structure makes a real difference in our focus on Sunday morning?
Well, number one, just a practical thing. I think you're going to have more people in the second session in the Bible class.
Okay. So more seats in the chairs.
Or
butts in the seats. There you go.
Whatever. Well, and see, I think you can really do some interesting things in that second session after worship. So you got worship maybe starting at 9:30, and if Tracy is decently getting us through the sermon, we can get out by 10:45 or 10:30, maybe. Hopefully. But just thinking different things you can do. I think one of the good things we did the time we did do it at our church was Tracy had coffee with the preacher, and visitors could go over to one of the classrooms. It was set up like a living room. and had coffee and visit with visitors, and they ask them questions, and you can, have a good conversation with visitors and make them really feel comfortable about our church and meet some folks. Because I think, Tracy, you also had some of our members there with you.
Yeah, we did. And it really, I mean, I've said this many times since we went back to the way we've been doing it. It's
the way we always have done it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the way I was raised. Every church I've gone to and preached for, so forth. But no, I think we saw great success during that time. In fact, I know one of the years, the year that we were doing this, we had more baptisms than the whole time I've been here. Yeah. I know.
Now, number two, Payton, good thing. Number two, not only do coffee with the preacher, you can have a Bible class.
Sure.
That wants to go to. Number three, you can have a service group that's going to head out after church, and you got all kinds of possibilities that you can do. You can head out to the shut-ins to do Lord's Supper with them and visit with our shut-ins. You can head to a homeless camp and do a little Bible study at the homeless camp, maybe take them lunch. You can have some other service project that you're going out to do with a group, and you're going to go ahead and get that done and all have lunch together after you're done with your service project, which kind of goes back, Tracy, to your thing, a little more relationship building that's not built just because we got to get together and have a Devo or a class.
So you begin to, you have opportunity to put in practice what you hopefully had heard that morning.
Right.
Arlene Wiley agrees with you. She says, I like worship first. It can put your heart in a good place for class. And if class is going out to serve, sure enough, that's true. And Marilyn Yergler also says she likes the idea of worship first, Bible class second. No one said it, they like it the way they is now. So I really don't know what we were thinking.
I can tell you this, it wasn't me.
Give us another one, Tracy.
Yeah, one of the things, and this is probably going to scare people, but it shouldn't scare them, but a more relaxed worship setting. So I know when you put that out there, it's like, what's he about to say?
Like, my PJs. Is that what you're saying?
Let me before you go further.
Oh, here he goes.
I'll just throw you in one of mine because it goes with yours.
Okay, go ahead.
We talk about a lot. I had on my list that I made of some things is one thing you can do is you can change your auditorium seating. And get rid of the pews and have chairs so you can make all kinds of different configurations depending on what you want to do.
Okay, so that is a means by which you could go about changing the tone of worship, is by changing the seating.
Well, you think about it. We tend to, because we sometimes we get a little self-righteous. We tend to look at other churches and say, well, all they're putting on is a show.
Like a concert. You're in a concert hall. Yeah.
And so then you walk in our auditorium and it's set up like a concert hall. You got the pews, and everybody's facing forward because we're all up there to see the show up front. Which our show usually isn't as good as the other shows, but
well, Tracy, keep going on how would you go
Tracy, so go ahead. You know the word. I'm giving you, you can move your chairs around. Go ahead.
No, actually, I mean, you say that, and I mean, it just suddenly popped into my head with, as far as, to have it more family oriented, where you can, like you say, you can turn those chairs, you can make it more intimate with people, not to be so structured. We are, and it doesn't mean chaos. It just means, I think sometimes it is like a production, And to be honest, when, me and Payton were working on worship for the week, I mean, that's what we're doing. Okay, we got to have so many songs. We got to have why can't we just say, you know what, we're not going to have many songs today. We've got some things we really want to talk, or we're going to pray about some things that are, for example, Charlotte Hall, I mean, and Diana Kington, and just to say, you know what, this morning, we're going to spend a lot of time doing this type of thing. And even to a point of, maybe even point of discussion, just be able to sit and talk with each other.
Well, I mean, we had that experience when we went to Cersei, the three of us.
That's right. Very
Yes.
unique
And
experience.
we went to a church that's planted by the college church.
Yeah.
And we call it the table church because you go there and everyone's sitting around a table. So you
Yeah.
have 6 to 8 people at each table, a round table.
Yeah, it's
throughout-
almost like a banquet. Like you go to a banquet.
throughout the
I loved it. But anyway, I don't want to scare too many people.
And yeah, I don't want to get Tracy too excited.
I've
But,
always been about a table. So
but what you said was, like it'd be nice to be able to have some conversation. Well, during the Lord's Supper, each table had their own conversation
yeah,
about that.
it's very
Yeah,
intimate.
Yeah, the Lord's Supper was there in the middle, and you still sang, you still had a lesson, but then you had periods of prayer where you passed a paper around and you prayed, you took notes, and then you had a time of somebody at the table led a devotional thought, like you said, and it was a really cool experience.
Yeah.
One of the cool things I remember about that, Joe, I'm glad you brought that up, is during the Lord's Supper, we did our own prayers. There were certain, we talked about what we were doing. All the tables were doing this. And then you start hearing this and it just grows, and it's people praying around the room.
Yeah.
And it was just such a very intimate moment, I felt like.
Well, and talk about equipping your members to participate in worship, but also participate in their faith. Like, not only are you creating a worship experience there, but you are practicing for what you could go do around your table or around a restaurant table with your friends or family and so forth. It's a cool model. I like the idea when done well.
And they also, they had a speaker for 15 minutes, and then you talked about the things at your table.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
maybe
So,
they bring in table and chairs.
Couple of comments going off of this discussion. Diane Williams is requesting comfy chairs, please. If we decide to change up some of the chairs. Susan McGee, I love doing the Lord's Supper around a table. Now, Glenda Wilds, putting Tracy on blast, says that he used to do sermons where he really involved the members. I always enjoyed those. It seemed less formal in a way. Used to. So, Tracy, come on.
Well, you got your opportunity this week, Payton, because you're dealing with the fall or the failure or whatever you want to call it.
Well,
so if you want to point out people, that's fine.
Tracy, she also tells people I used to be a good softball player.
Oh man. Bob Wilson says the priesthood of believers could participate. So kind of what we're just saying.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the great things about our Church of Christ tradition is that everyone has a chance or an ability to participate in our worship.
Yeah. And Julie Anderson, we've tried groups in rooms and it was hard to hear each other. So just,
that was when we did that in the fellowship hall, I think,
right,
a couple of times. And yes, I do remember that part.
So always obstacles that you'll face, but participatory, great idea.
Big obstacle. That's an obstacle.
Yeah. So Joe, your next one.
Use the facilities that you have.
This is a good one.
And we're kind of seeing that because of the renovated Founders Hall and the renovated upstairs Lynn Center and those kind of things. But churches should not be sitting vacant. I mean, you got a great facility, you got a big room, you got a big this or that. It shouldn't just be Sunday morning, Wednesday night the building's used and it's vacant. Otherwise, it really if you are a church, you ought to figure out ways to get your facility in use. Either you're putting something on or you're allowing organizations from the community take advantage of what facilities you have.
And that's a good point. It doesn't have to be you feeling like you always have to just create something every night of the week, but allowing the community to use your space as well.
And I think typically, churches would have Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts would meet there and things like that. So there's some of the, you kind of have a history of some of that going on, but we need to ramp it really up and just like, let's have this building being used. And that's one of the, when Chris Dean and Glenda were putting the Founders Hall together for us, I mean, one of the charges Chris gave us was, hey, this thing needs to be used. And it's getting used. It's getting used even though we're not even hardly there as a church. There's a lot of people using it. What else you have, Tracy? One more.
One
And
more.
I'm going to lay off the one about part-time preachers would be good, and y'all get a real job.
We appreciate that.
I saw a restaurant hiring today while I went to lunch. So
There we go. There we go.
Taco Bell, Tracy will be right there.
Taco
Oh,
Bell.
Taco Bell. Yeah, they got a
Those are
new
the new
grilled
front and
cheese
back.
kind of thing going on over there. Anyway, so this kind of goes with what you just said, Joe. Community outreach, and which is finding ways to partner with good organizations, helping people who are hurting in our community. You know, we've done that to some extent, you know, with Buggy Bunch here at our facilities. And, you know, over the years, we've had AA, and I mean, I think these are all good things. And I think just to continue to find ways, like you said, just fill it up every day, you know,
Yeah.
and
Once
with good
again,
things.
Those are things that any church can do, no matter what size they are
Yeah.
or not. You know, you can find something you can partner with in the community. Yeah.
Well, and here's the thing, we can't run a Buggy Bunch.
Right.
You know, we can't run an AA necessarily, especially not the way it had been done. And it's good that, you know, we're still trying to do things, but there are other people out there trying to do good things and have, you know, Buggy Bunch has a Christ-centered focus, and that you can partner with them and help them, and you're continuing to do good in our community. And
I think what you're pointing out is we can't do it better than Buggy Bunch.
We cannot.
And we don't need to try to do it better.
Right.
I mean, Buggy Bunch is here right now, doing an event for parents and kids. And it's just like, we don't have the capacity right now, potentially, to put on something like that, but we can help, because it's all about the mission. We can help, you know, another organization love people with the love of Christ by providing them a space to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I advertised in the email that I would have a little analysis for the big Supreme Court cases. So I think we can move on to that. Unless Trace's if you have one other one that's like, hey, I got to throw this out there.
No, go ahead.
We'll just move on. We'll move on past. Well, I was going to say part-time staff and paid elders would be a good idea.
I hear you.
It's kind of like defunding the police, you know, move some of that money off the staff, give it to the people who are in charge of this thing, you know. But anyway, okay. 2 big Supreme Court cases yesterday. Good, solid decisions for us who are interested in religious liberty and the First Amendment of our Constitution. So you have Our Lady of Guadalupe School, and the issue there was, can someone who gets fired from a religious school sue for improper firing based on age discrimination or any other reason? And the Supreme Court ruled that, look, the First Amendment trumps this the employment law. And so we're not going to, the government is not going to get involved, is for the most part. There's some exceptions. They're not going to basically get involved in the hiring and firing decisions of a religious school. It originally started out as a ministerial exemption. And so there was some thought, okay, you're going to have to show that the person is a minister, and does a school teacher in a Christian school equal a minister? And they really, they're saying, well, look, ministerial doesn't mean they went to theology school and have a degree and that kind of stuff. So that's good for Christian schools. It's good for religious liberty, that that First Amendment right is pretty important right. So that's good. Little Sisters of the Poor, and I think this case is like 7 years old. I think they've been to this, maybe the Supreme Court once before. But Little Sisters of the Poor is the case of can you force a religious organization such as Little Sisters of the Poor to provide contraceptives to their employees, require them in their health insurance to provide that contraceptive stuff when it goes against their religious beliefs. And so, of course, they're Catholic, and and that would go against their religious beliefs. And once again, the Supreme Court ruled that this, you can't force them to do that. That is okay. It's the exception that the Trump administration gave to that rule for religious organizations was valid, is a valid exception. So 2 good rulings for religious liberty. And so we can be thankful for that. That's some of the things we should be praying for, that no matter what else is happening, that they at least allow us to practice our faith, how we want to practice our faith. No matter what else everyone else is doing, we at least can have our little community, our little world where we're able to practice our faith without any problem doing that. So those are the 2 Supreme Court decisions that came out yesterday, and they're I think if you really look on the back, we're kind of on a good roll. Just about every case that comes up here in the last several years that involve the religious protections in the First Amendment have gone to support the First Amendment religious rights and freedom. So good stuff.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. And if you have questions and concerns, you can direct those straight to Joe.
Yes, absolutely.
I'll handle those for you.
He's closer to the Supreme Court than we are, so
Yeah.
That's not very much closer.
Yeah. So my fun story about Tracy's age, my 4-year-old, I asked him, we're asking how old he thinks I am and Darian is, and I said, how old do you think Mr. Tracy is? And my oldest 8-year-old, he says, Mr. Tracy is 35. I was like, okay. And then my little 4-year-old comes in and goes, no. He is not 35. He's 36.
No, I mean, that's just, I mean,
so you're doing pretty good.
He's exactly right. 36.
That's what I told him. I'm like, you're right on the dot, dude. Right on the dot. So
that is right.
That's pretty much the only number he could think of above 35, but it is what it is.
Hey, I'll take it. I will take it.
All I know is I don't have to ask for the senior discount when I go to the restaurants and stuff now. It just automatically there.
There you go.
I'm not looking 36. Okay.
All right.
I think that's a wrap for us tonight. Good discussion, guys. Enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I hope everyone else did. And hey, keep the comments coming. We may, we may have to get some good ideas from you guys and look at implementing some of those things. But until next time, just remember Tracy's got a guest tomorrow, 2 guests tomorrow.
Yeah, I do.
And a psalm. Payton is preaching for us on the online experience this Sunday.
And the Bible Peel podcast, episode 5 is up.
And you can download the Bible Peel podcast and find out more about the fall. I'm sticking with the fall. Try to change that, but I'm sticking with the fall.
You can stick to your guns on that one.
Yeah, I wish it was the fall.
All right, guys. Talk to everybody later on.
Yes.
See ya.